Does this ruin the resale value to scribble out your address? This was the very first issue of Nintendo Power I got in the mail. Issue 236, Holiday 2008 edition. This had a reviews blowout, talking about a lot of Wii and DS games that were, coming out around that time. And, yeah, I have a lot of nostalgia for this issue. Of course, I'm like 5? So I have a lot of nostalgia for the Wii and DS era, but I think that's like a great era to be nostalgic over if you're kind of into the same kind of video game clique as I am, where it's just like, yeah, I like a lot of the retro stuff and still a lot of the modern stuff too. It's kind of a mishmash of everything, because the Wii and DS truly had everything. You had both modern experiences and retro experiences in the form of re-releases and the virtual console games, all of that. It was a wonderful time to truly get into video games. Even though I was into video games before that point, the Wii and DS was kind of when I started to get, scary. And in terms of magazines, I've heard of Nintendo Power before this point, and I did kind of want to give it a try. However, I just didn't really get the chance until around this time. I think my mom was looking through, magazine catalogs, and she was, looking at stuff that, she wanted to subscribe to, and she saw Nintendo Power, and she probably said, it's just like, hey, my son's a fucking dweeb. And she asked me, hey, do you want to subscribe to Nintendo Power? And I said, what do you think? In terms of magazines, I did enjoy a good Nickelodeon magazine from time to time back in the day, as in I got a lot of them. And I would generally save all the magazines I'd get, and I would bring them on car rides, and I would just thumb through old ones. It didn't really matter, half the time I just kind of like looking at the advertisements. Magazines were kind of like ways to pass the time in the car for me. I'd grab a couple magazines, go in the back seat, and enjoy those, because my family lived about an hour away from the rest of my family, like my extended family, like cousins and aunts and uncles and all of that. So I had to kind of get used to entertaining myself on road trips, because, we'd generally be traveling like an hour or two each weekend. So magazines helped me do that. And Nintendo Power was definitely one of them. A lot of the time, I didn't necessarily read them. Sometimes, I just flip through them and, look at all the fun pictures. And then, after a while, I'd actually legitimately read the stuff in here. But a lot of the time, I kind of just like looking at the pictures, looking at the advertisements, and, reading every here and there. But, hey, I can read now. So we might as well take a look at the very first issue of Nintendo Power I got, the Holiday 2008 edition. This one had reviews of Punch-Out!, or at least information on Punch-Out!, Mario & Luigi RPG 3. So either they didn't have the localized name for that yet. That game did come out in 2009 as Bowser's Inside Story over here. RPG 3, that's what it was called in Japan. So I assume this is just the fact that the game wasn't localized entirely yet with a brand new English name, or they just didn't have room to fit the entire title on this, including Sin and Punishment 2, which wasn't called Sin and Punishment 2 here, it was called Sin and Punishment Star Successor. Are you impressed? Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, which was the remake of the first Fire Emblem on DS, and Henry Hatsworth, which was a pretty cool little puzzle game on the DS back in the day, made by EA, I believe. But yeah, we have this entire collage of all different kinds of Wii and DS games happening at the time. This is the Smash Brothers they're too afraid to make. Without further ado, we go in here. And yeah, it's just like, just looking back at old magazines from your childhood, you instantly even recognize the advertisements. Even the advertisements just kind of give me this weird sense of nostalgia. I was rewatching Clifford the Big Red Dog yesterday, and I was just like, holy shit! There's a lot of stuff that you just forget from your childhood, where you're just like, oh, I completely forgot about that. Just advertisements kind of do that for me. And this kind of brings me back to just this fun era in gaming where I don't know, just that early Xbox 360 era. Even seeing the original PS3 logo is just kind of soothing to me. And we go over here, and another ad. We literally go from one ad to another. My Sims Kingdom. A game that has the audacity to write a little new splash screen on the cover. I had this game. I actually did enjoy this game. I remember a lot of people vividly hated My Sims. I never played the original My Sims, but I did play this. This was a random like Valentine's Day present from my mom, which I guess she just saw like a game for sale, because I never really got Valentine's Day presents from like my parents. So I guess she just saw it on sale and she was just like, hey, here you go. And I played that, and I had quite a bit of fun with this game. I forget a lot about it, but I did beat it back in the day, and it was a fun little experience. It was like a fun little, like, light puzzler, kind of life simulator slash blah, blah, blah. It was a mixture of a lot of things. It's kind of hard to explain My Sims. It's kind of like if Animal Crossing had more of, like, a story mode, I guess, and even then, like, I'm just like, Moving on, and Tales of Symphonia, Dawn of the New World. I remember that advertisement quite well. Then we have the table of contents. Let's take a look at this. Oh, man. So they would do interviews with different game developers and game designers and all of that in Nintendo Power as the years went on. In this era of Nintendo Power, I believe this wasn't, this wasn't created by, Nintendo. This was done by, I believe, Future, which was a magazine company, and, Nintendo used to kind of make Nintendo Power themselves, and then they kind of handed off the rights to Future to kind of do stuff themselves, which I think kind of helped Nintendo Power to be less of like a big old, like, isn't Nintendo great, guys? Like, they weren't afraid to just kind of say, like, yeah, this game kind of sucked. Which, that's not to say Nintendo Power, when Nintendo ran it, wasn't afraid to say if a game wasn't, the greatest in the world. But, this was definitely, this era was definitely a lot more like, hey, actual reviews of some games. Even if sometimes, it felt like, I think they gave, like, Sonic and the Black Knight an 8 out of 10, which, I don't know what the end goal is there, but you could tell this was definitely ran by more, fans of the game industry rather than just Nintendo employees. Like here, we have Shinji Mikami. That's what they were called, Power Profiles. Actually, I probably mistook this Anuma interview. This might be an interview, I'm not sure, but I mistook that for a Power Profile, which is what they had back then. But yeah, they did one on Shinji Mikami, who created Resident Evil. Then we have the Deca Sports advertisement, only $29.99? Yeah, that's pretty expensive compared to a lot of the other Wii shovelware, Wii Sports ripoff games from back in the day. Like, I remember Game Party. Game Party was like 20 bucks. And I feel like Game Party could probably compete pretty well with Deca Sports. Move on. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2009. Naturally. And here we have kind of like a bit of like an editor's page who's just talking about various things. This editor, Chris Slate, he's talking about how 2008 was pretty damn good. 2008 definitely had like a ton of stuff going on in it, but I think this was definitely the year that a lot of more hardcore Nintendo fans were just starting to feel a little left in the cold by the Wii, because you had Smash Brothers Brawl and Mario Kart Wii at the beginning of the year, which were fantastic. But then after that, it kind of fell down something. Like, there was like Mario Super Sluggers, Animal Crossing City Folk, which was kind of seen as just basically the DS game Wild World, but on the Wii at the time. And Wii Music, that was pretty much it. So I'd say it's fair to say 2008 was a year of very high highs and low lows for Nintendo. Ninja Town. Sure, a bunch of Natsume games. They just had a whole ass spread here. And then moving on. Here we have the news. Hold on to your shorts. After more than a decade down the mat, Punch-Out is back up for the next round on Wii. What an absolutely phenomenal game. I really want them to do new Punch-Out. Punch-Out on Wii is one of my favorite games on the console. It is just like this perfect modern recreation of Punch-Out. And even calling it a modern recreation is being a bit like, I don't know, because it's literally Punch-Out. Like, it's just Punch-Out, but using 3D models. It's literally Punch-Out. And because it's using 3D models means they're able to do more with animation with the characters, which is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. And I think it is one of the most slept-on games on the Wii. And speaking of slept-on games on the Wii, Sin and Punishment, Star Successor, or at the time, let me see if they call it Sin and Punishment Star Successor. No, just Sin and Punishment 2. They say, fortunately, we forgot about all that and could therefore fully appreciate the giddy shock and excitement of Sin and Punishment. Whoa. Wait. Treasures Masato Megawa in Volume 222, he mentioned, when we were originally working on Sin and Punishment for Virtual Console, there was some discussion about utilizing Wii-like controls, and I think now that we're working more with Wii, a sequel is something we'd very much like to try. Fortunately, we forgot about all that. All right, and Sin and Punishment 2 was revealed at Nintendo's recent media summit. Yeah, so they kind of teased Sin and Punishment coming back. It's so cool to see certain franchises just that you never expect to see come back, and even come back in a localized form. You know, Sin and Punishment was a Japanese-only Nintendo 64 game, and it finally got its chance in North America on the Wii Virtual Console. And, you know, now it's more readily available to re-release on the Wii U Virtual Console and on Nintendo 64 and Nintendo Switch Online. But to have Sin and Punishment Star Successor come out in North America, retail release, and you know, just they had the confidence to do that during an era in which Nintendo was notorious, or Nintendo of America was notorious for just not localizing certain things. They were just like, no. So the fact they were willing to take a risk on Sin and Punishment was really damn cool. And the fact that it came back in the first place, once again, was really damn cool. But in the very bottom corner, we have the DSi. Yeah, so the DSi came out in holiday of 2008 in Japan and released here in North America around spring of 2009. And I was so damn excited about this thing. Pretty much, if you added a camera to something back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I was all over it. I was just like, oh my god, I gotta have that, because I kind of thought about the idea of like using that as like my go-to camera, or using like the built-in effects and whatnot that you could do with these cameras in like videos I would create back in the day. You know, I definitely did that with like the iPod Nano, like the 5th generation, I believe it was, which was pretty much just the 4th generation, but it had a camera. And it was like one of the worst cameras of all time. It was in the worst placement too. Like the camera placement on that iPod Nano was literally where you'd be holding like it would literally be where the back of your hand. So like imagine if there was a camera on like this Game Boy Advance and it was like right here where your hand would go. But I was really excited by it, and I had the exact same thought with the Nintendo DSi. It had 2 cameras. I saved up like crazy to get it. I traded in my DS Lite and everything. I traded in a couple games at GameStop and I got it, and I did enjoy my DSi quite a bit. I remember doing a lot of dicking around with like the sound application and downloading stuff on the DSi shop and all of that. It was a ton of fun. I definitely think I should have saved up and traded in stuff for like a game system I didn't already have. It was just like, let's be honest, like I saved up that much money and I traded in my DS Lite just to play DS games in a slightly different form factor and not be able to play Game Boy Advance games. I was 12, not a financial advisor. Alright, so here we have confirmation that Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story was still just being called Mario & Luigi RPG 3. And then we also have Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on the Wii and DS. The Crystal Bearers, I believe? No, this is Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Echoes of Time. I apologize. Help Wanted. I don't even know this game. All right, so this looks like a just pretty much literally every other Wii minigame collection. My World, My Way. I've heard about this game. I think it's like kind of like a weird like you're kind of a princess and you're a bit snobby and you're just like no. And Ease Book 1 and 2, Naruto games. As usual. And then Game Watch Forecast. What was coming out around this time? So they're mainly talking about a lot of 2009 games here. Oh my god, Disaster Day of Crisis is still TBA. Disaster Day of Crisis was pretty much a game made by Monolith Soft, which who are the Xenoblade Chronicles developers. And it was kind of like this game that felt and looked like a typical American PG-13 blockbuster, one that like you'd go to during the summer because you have nothing else to do, and then completely forget about a couple weeks later. And I have the game. I have a European Wii U, so I played it on there, and it's fine. It came out in Europe and Japan, but never over here. And I guess like I heard like there was I think like North America, or at least Nintendo of America, thought there were like some quality concerns with the title, like man, we can't release this. and like I just didn't see it. It wasn't like amazing or anything, but it was a perfectly fine game, and it does have its fans. So I don't really know what they were talking about with that. And why they released this instead. But yeah, they had the Conduit coming out here in Q1 2009. That was kind of a big deal because that game was like all about being like, oh man, the Wii is getting its first hardcore exclusive game, and it was just kind of a generic FPS. It was good, but you know, the Conduit just, I think they were like, they were positioning the Conduit as like this game to just change the perception of the Wii. Like, oh man, the Wii doesn't have hardcore games except the Conduit, and it's just like, you know, it was the Conduit. It wasn't bad, but it was just very like, it was pretty basic. Except for the ending of Conduit 2. I think Abraham Lincoln was involved there. And speaking of hardcore titles, these are all done by Sega. I didn't even like think about that for a second. But yeah, Conduit was published by Sega. And then House of the Dead Overkill, published by Sega, was coming out in 2009. That is like the best House of the Dead console game that you could have really released, as in like, you know, the best way to put a House of the Dead game out in the year 2009 on the best platform for it. You know, like, it didn't take itself seriously. It was based all around like 70s B movies, kind of like grindhouse films, and you know, it was all about just like being kind of like silly, dumb fun. You know, and it was on the Wii where you had the pointer. It was perfect. Though it didn't run very well. It like stuttered like a lot, which felt like it's just like when it's an on-rail shooter, it's kind of like, come on, man. But then also published by Sega in 2009, Mad World. So Mad World was kind of another one that was kind of like, oh man, that we can do hardcore stuff. And it was developed by Platinum Games. And that felt more like, instead of like the Conduit, which was kind of prove like a point that like, oh man, the Wii can do hardcore games. Mad World felt more like, let's put the goriest game possible on the most family-friendly game system possible as a joke. Like that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like it was like a strategic move, even though it probably was, because it's like, hey, you know, like how better are we gonna stand out by putting this out on the Wii? Didn't work. Sonic and the Black Knight, 2009. Skate It from EA, which was the Wii version of Skate. Wii Sports Resort, spring of 2009, which that ended up coming out in like June or July of 2009. Wii Ski and Snowboard by Namco Bandai. Very interesting, just like how they just tried to piggyback off of the Wii name, but they didn't have the rights to use the Wii name, so they just called it Wii. And then we got some Dragon Quest games, Dragon Quest V and Dragon Quest VI. Square Enix would like kind of bring over a lot of games that never really got a North American release on the DS or even the Game Boy Advance. You know, comes to mind a couple of the Final Fantasies and Dragon Quest V and VI. You know, just they got their North American release on the DS, which is really cool. Duke Nukem Trilogy Chain Reaction. What the? There's 3 Duke Nukem games here. Duke Nukem Trilogy Chain Reaction, Duke Nukem Trilogy Critical Mass, Duke Nukem Trilogy Proving Grounds. So Critical Mass came out, I believe. That came out alongside Duke Nukem Forever in 2011. These other 2, I don't know of. I don't know of those. And the fact that they're called Trilogy, I assume, does that mean like they're a trilogy, like all of these are a trilogy? So like these 3 games make up the Duke Nukem Trilogy? Personal Trainer Walking, Rhythm Heaven, first half of 2009 is coming out. Trackmania DS, a lot of cool stuff. Marble Maze game, Kororinpa. There it is. Yeah, so sequel to Marvel Saga. Finally, Club Nintendo comes to North America. So Club Nintendo didn't launch until around this time, which is crazy. I loved Club Nintendo, even with all of its faults. You know, like it wasn't the perfect loyalty program because Europe and Japan got so much cooler stuff, but yeah, it was definitely really, really cool to finally get Club Nintendo. It was cool to get something, you know, and loyalty programs just don't have nothing on Club Nintendo. At least like nowadays loyalty programs, like My Nintendo, anything else, like I'm like, Club Nintendo back in this era of the Wii and DS, and even the 3DS and Wii U was really cool. which shows just how much you have to appreciate what you have before it's gone. Like, it just shows that so well, because all we did during this era was bitch about Club Nintendo. Shaun White's snowboarding, there's a full spread ad. And then Wii channels, pretty much talking about a bunch of the downloadable stuff happening on Wii and DS. Yeah, they're talking about Cave Story here. Cave Story launched on WiiWare, and that was like a big deal back in the day. Still have to play a bit of Cave Story, but from what I've played, it is very, very good. Gradius Rebirth and Pool Revolution Q Sports. It's pretty crazy how much stuff, how much space is dedicated to downloadable stuff on Wii. It shows just how cool it was to just always have like cool stuff to download. And it is something that I kind of miss these days, just having this feeling of like, oh man, what's there to download this week? I felt like that with the Wii and DS and 3DS and even the Wii U. Now on the Nintendo Switch, it just feels like there's too much stuff. There's just too much, and it's too much garbage too. Where at least back during the Wii, like, yeah, you got some bad games on WiiWare. Here they're reviewing them right here, where they don't give them point scores, but they kind of give them like green, yellow, and then red. So green is like, yeah, get this game. And then, yellow is kind of like, and then red is like, no. And they pretty much call it recommended, and grumble. I was always a little confused as a kid, like what meant what, as in like, what is worse, or grumble. But yeah, World of Goo, Tetris, this was a good month for WiiWare games. Look, World of Goo was like the big WiiWare game. I remember like some websites, I think even like IGN awarded World of Goo with like Wii Game of the Year, which I was like, okay, Smash Brothers Brawl came out this year, but yeah, this is all talking about WiiWare. I think probably on this side maybe they'll have Virtual Console. And so Mario Golf on the Nintendo 64, Secret of Mana, Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition on the Sega Genesis. That got a So I assume they're gonna just talk about how it's just like kind of like, why are you getting the Sega Genesis version? I was a big proponent of Special Champion Edition back in the day, but that was due mostly to the excellent Genesis 6-button controller. Take that out of the equation, and there's not much reason to get this over Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo for SNES. It's still a great fighter, but the colors and sound quality don't measure up. I'd agree. It's just like, what's the point of getting that? But I kind of like that, the Virtual Console gave the ability to have these weirder versions of games get released. Just because like it was literally like, hey, do you want the Game Boy Advance version of this game, or at least on Wii U, or do you want the Super Nintendo version of this game? Like, they released like Super Mario Advance 2 Super Mario World for the Game Boy Advance on the Wii U Virtual Console, while also releasing Super Mario World on the SNES Wii U Virtual Console. And I like that. I like that you have the option to buy like one or the other or both. And, you get to see what the differences are, where now with all these compilations releasing, that's really cool. But a lot of times, like, if a game isn't included, it's kind of like this feeling of like, oh, well, when are they going to re-release it, it feels like those compilations are kind of like the one and only chance for some obscure versions of games to release. Not saying that they'll never release, but, a lot of times, it's just like when a game isn't included in a certain compilation, it's like, oh, well, when are we going to get it then? And the Virtual Console kind of gave people the ability to buy like these weirder versions of games, and I really like that. Talk is cheap. Free. Nintendo recently announced that the soon-to-be released Wii Speak microphone peripheral will include a coupon to download the all-new Wii Speak channel free of charge. I never had the Wii Speak channel because I never had the Wii Speak because I wasn't about that life as a 11-year-old. Talking about Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon here. I have absolutely no experience with this game. I do have a bit of experience with the original, as I played the localized version that released in 2020 on the Nintendo Switch, which, that was pretty cool that they finally got the original Famicom release of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon the Blade of Light. Just the fact that they did remake it for the DS kind of gave me the feeling of like, that's cool, but like, it's not like we've never had a chance to play this experience, this story before. Deadly Creatures. Oh yeah, Rat versus Scorpion. I've seen this game so much. I've never played it though. I know nothing about it. But now I fucking Rat. Family playtime. Look at all these. Look at all these. All right, so all of these like random little like $20 whatever game compilation game cartridges. Where you have, you know, DS, Sudoku, Solitaire Overload. Too much Solitaire, man. Blue Dragon Plus. Weird because that was like a big Xbox 360 game, was Blue Dragon, and but then they made like sequels and spin-offs for the DS. It was kind of like Viva Pinata in that way, because it's just like it felt like, oh, that's like an Xbox 360 game, but they brought it right over to the DS pretty much. And I think Microsoft was willing to let that kind of stuff slide just because, like, you know, they didn't have a handheld at the time, and, you know, they sure as hell weren't gonna do it with Sony. MLB Superstar, only $20. Oh, great, yeah. Oh, Boom Blocks, yeah, that was a big game. Just the fact that it had Steven Spielberg as the big, like, oh man, this is a Steven Spielberg game. I wonder how much he actually was involved in this game. I truly do. You know, he was definitely interested, and he definitely did play a role in it. But yeah, it is definitely really really interesting that he did just like 2 games, and it was they were both Boom Blocks games. And one of the most prolific directors of all time, known for some of the greatest stories ever told, made fucking Boom Blocks. Here we have an interview with Eiji Aonuma for the 10th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. It's just kind of talking about, you know, 10 years after its release, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is still revered by many as the best and most influential game ever made. Why do you think it has made such a large and lasting impact? Unlike Shigeru Miyamoto, who had a firm idea of what he wanted to make based on his experiences developing 3D games in the past, I was working on a 3D game for the first time. Since there weren't any similar games to emulate, I groped around in the dark for quite some time. What? Stuff like this I really wish we got more often. In the digital age, it feels like interviews like this can be kind of lost sometimes. When it's just talking to somebody about, like, hey, like, let's just talk about this. It feels like everything has to be for a reason, where it's like, oh man, this game's coming out, let's talk about it. Or this is just like talking about Ocarina of Time. I like that. The amount of ads, the amount of ads in this magazine is crazy. Just the fact that we have Prince of Persia: The Fallen King, and then one page later, oh, another ad. Oh, well, at least this one we're good. It came from Japan, so I guess we're talking about just Japanese games here. It's Nintendo Power. 90% of these games are. Ooh, Klonoa. So, I guess they were still calling it Klonoa Door to Phantomile. Like, because, like, you know, they called the Wii remake just Klonoa at the end of the day. But yeah, it's such a simple idea for a game where it's just basically like a 2.5D platformer. But, you know, you just kind of use, you know, you grab things and you use them to kind of get, you know, do double jumps and fling them at other things, you know, either in the foreground, background, you know, side to side, all of that. It's pretty simple, but it just makes for just such a unique and fun platformer. And also, just because this magazine isn't being done in-house at Nintendo, they specifically mention that it came from a PS1 game. Wow. Professor Layton and the Last Time Travel, I believe that was renamed to The Last Spectre. I have an entire interview with Suda51 for No More Heroes Desperate Struggle, which is cool. This game would have come out for like another year. Like this was like a 2010 game, which is crazy that they announced it this early. But yeah, we're very excited to hear there's a sequel to No More Heroes on the way. Are you going to be directing the game? I'll be writing the script again, but this time I'm going to watch over the game as an executive director. Someone else from Grasshopper will direct this one. Yeah, so I remember that. So yeah, so Suda51 was involved, but he was working on a lot of games at the time. I believe like around this time, at least like around the time that No More Heroes did come out, like probably like a year later, like Lollipop Chainsaw came out. There was a bunch of stuff going on around that time with Suda, so, you know, that was understandable. I know nothing on these pages. I mean, I've heard of Tenchu. I've heard of Tenchu, but I know nothing about it. Kamino Yusha? This classic-style DS RPG from SNK doesn't have a ton of hype behind it, but it impressed us by augmenting its traditional gameplay with stunning good looks. What is this game? Valkyrie Profile I've at least heard. My god. Alright, so this is mainly talking about Tokyo Game Show stuff. Yeah, I know nothing about any of that stuff, but that's what's really cool. I think that's just what was really fun about just magazines back in the day was that, you know, like when you're flipping through, you know, you're more likely to read a lot of that stuff because, you know, online you have more of a choice between like what you read and what you don't. With a magazine, you're kind of flipping through and you're just, you know, you're flipping through because you want to flip through. You just want to be entertained for a little bit. So you're gonna kind of like take a peek at things that you may not be interested in, but you know, you may get interested in. Gardening Mama is in the it came from Japan section, which, I mean, isn't false, but like, man, like I just don't automatically associate Gardening Mama with, oh man, I went to Tokyo Game Show. Guess what I saw? Rayman Raving Rabbids TV Party. This was the only Rabbids game that I owned back during the Wii heyday. And I didn't really like it. One of my friends, Jeff, he loves Rabbids shit. He's wrong. It just kind of fell victim to a lot of like Wii minigame collections, in my opinion, where it just like the minigames just went on for too long or they were too short. I forget which was the problem, but the load times were too long and everything. Like it just kind of like blended in of like a lot of dancing games, a lot of music games, a lot of stuff that just like, I don't know, it just kind of added up to just kind of like a very, just a very clunky experience for me. But I haven't played the game in a while, but that's just how I remember it. Oh my god, Gamefly. So these are like the big, whatever, these are like big, like, oh man, 2008's calling. This brings back memories of just walking into like a Best Buy or something and just seeing some of this stuff available. Sonic Unleashed was like, my god, I was so damn excited for that game. Animal Crossing City Folk, I bought used at GameStop, and I played it for a little bit, and I had no damn idea what I was doing. And then the Gamer's non-game holiday gift guide. All right, let's see what they're talking about. Art books. All right, so we got the Street Fighter art book, Mega Man Zero art book. Art books, I think, are a pretty good evolution of the strategy guide right now, where it's just like, frankly speaking, like, I think people that are upset that strategy guides are kind of dead, all just don't read them. They just like buying them. So it's just like, I kind of feel like at that point, like, why not do an art book? Because I feel like the same people that want to buy strategy guides would also be willing to buy art books, and art books have more of like an application where it's just like you're gonna be more likely to open that up and use it for what it's worth, like, you know, looking at the art and admiring it, compared to a strategy guide where you're gonna open it up and thumb through it maybe like once, but you're probably not gonna use it for an actual like strategy guides. And like for the amount of work that goes into making a strategy guide, like no wonder they just put them online. The mini statues by First 4 Figures. So they got Zero Suit Samus, Sheik, Sonic, slot cars, plush toys and figures, a snow sled, which just has the Mario Galaxy box art on it. Board games, so pretty much there's the Donkey Kong Jenga and Monopoly Nintendo Collector's Edition. And they say next up for USAopoly is a Nintendo-themed chess set. Ooh, surface graphics. I remember seeing these all over the place. You know, they got original 8-bit Mario, Donkey Kong, and then new Super Mario Brothers. DS accessories, so keychains. Oh, you putting that in the shoulder button? Oh, never mind. This is literally like this is supposed to be like a game carrying case. You can see, like, it's just a case. That's always kind of cool to me whenever they like design like the accessories to look like the systems. But with how close this looks to the system, that's just dangerous. That'll probably get somebody arrested. There's clothing, the candy. They had all those mushrooms and energy drinks, all of that. They still have them like some places, you know, like you can still find this stuff, but it may take a second. And then Moon, an advertisement for Moon. Oh, what was this only available at GameStop and Amazon? This is weird. So this is really strange to me because it's done by Renegade Kid, who did Mutant Mudds on the 3DS, and they pretty much only did like after this Moon, they did like Dementium. Like they did a bunch of like really like big high quality DS games, and then after that they pretty much just did these 2D retro inspired stuff before just spinning off into like a completely different entity called a TUI, which was more so like Renegade Kid was just like about this and the 8-bit stuff, and then they kind of split it off, so then Renegade Kid would only be about this kind of stuff and a TUI would be about the retro stuff. But it's still weird to me that the Mutant Mudds developer pretty much like did this kind of shit. 20 years of Nintendo power. It's pretty cool that the first Nintendo Power issue that I got focused on this retrospective stuff. I absolutely adore this kind of stuff. Like, I think it's super fun to just look back at, like, old magazines like this. I loved it back, like, in other magazines. I got Nickelodeon magazine a ton, and they did some of this sometimes where they'd show, like, old magazine covers and old, like, articles from old magazines from afar. And I always loved that kind of stuff. And Nintendo Power did a bunch of singular issues where they'd release just, like, something just to newsstands. And I have one that's just talking about 20 years of Nintendo Power. Maybe they'll talk about it somewhere. But here we have the power profiles for Shinji Mikami. I always thought it was really cool how they'd show, like, the gameography. How they'd show, like, oh man, you know, he did some work on this Game Boy game, Hatena no Daiboken. That's probably how you pronounce it. He just did planning for this game. But then he did Goof Troop and then Resident Evil. And again, they're not afraid to mention PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 and all of that, which I think is really cool. It's something where it just kind of feels like, you know, obviously without, you know, being produced in-house at Nintendo, you know, they're like, yeah, sure, we'll mention other game systems. It's really weird how so many video game companies just refuse to mention the other guys. And I'm just kind of like, it doesn't hurt, you know. It's just like you're just mention, like, you gotta mention it sometimes, you know. Tecmo Bowl Kickoff, which was kind of a DS reboot of Tecmo Bowl from the NES days. Here we have Playback, which focuses on just kind of an older game. This one, Mole Mania, which is like one of the best little hidden gems from the Game Boy. Which was a puzzle game that was worked on by Shigeru Miyamoto, and I love it. I think it's really cool that they don't even care. Like, this isn't even about what's available on the Wii and DS virtual consoles or available to buy. Like, they're just like, hey, let's talk about an old Game Boy game. I think that's awesome. And they even talk about other mole things, bottles from Banjo-Kazooie, Impossible, Miss Pac-Man's mole. I remember this ad pretty well. Get the ultimate summer experience, where this is pretty much giving you like a full, like, pretty much coding camp, I guess, where you'd go there and you'd learn about game programming and design and all of that. I thought, oh, get an opportunity to tour portions of Nintendo of America. That is awesome. Yeah, so that's just based out of Redmond, Washington. So, of course, you'd be able to do some Nintendo of America stuff. That would be really cool. And I remember seeing this advertisement all the time, and I would love to hear from somebody that, like, actually participated in this kind of stuff to see, like, oh man, was it really cool, or were they really, really bad to these kids? Just fed them garbage. And they have sweepstakes, giveaways, all that kind of stuff. Just an ocarina ad. Like, this isn't even, like, I don't think any of this even mentions Zelda. It's just an ocarina company that took out an ad in Nintendo Power. Another Naruto ad, I think that's 2 here, and then they do reviews. All right. So Animal Crossing City Folk got an 8 out of 10. Rygar on the Wii got a 7. Castlevania Judgment got a 7. Castlevania Judgment is like a pretty fun little fighting game that's just kind of like, you just don't take it seriously. The problem is they put it on the Wii, which I just felt was like kind of like, why? It's like, you can use the GameCube controller and Classic controller and all of that, but the main input would be, you know, using the Wii remote and, you'd use a whip. This is Castlevania. I'm just like, why? Oh man, look at that. An advertisement for a Castlevania game. Oh, look at that. Damn, Sonic Unleashed got an 8 out of 10. I'd say the Wii version, I'd give that like a 7.5 or so. It's okay. It's pretty good. Guitar Hero World Tour. Yeah, this was right in the middle of the big rhythm game wave. And it was a big deal. Yeah, this was one that I played recently with some friends. I never really had a Guitar Hero set until recently. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, though. I do enjoy Lego Rock Band just because the song list is so much more like just stupid mid-2000s pop songs. I just kind of like that. It's just kind of silly and fun. It's also fun to see Legos sing it. Cookie Mama World Kitchen got a 6.5. That seems fairly tame of a review for a Cooking Mama game, where it's just like they're just the same damn thing over and over again. Especially Cooking Mama on the Wii, where it's just like, come on, man, this is like a sequel to another Cooking Mama game, and it's just like just like Metal Slug 7, which I keep on forgetting was even a thing on the DS. And then we have Gauntlet on the DS, which I don't think came out. So like Nintendo Power reviewed it, but I don't think that game released. I think the whole thing with that game is that just like it didn't release. It didn't. It was like really impressive how like it had 3D on both the top screen and the bottom screen. And Nintendo kind of worked with them about this. They were kind of like, hey, you know, can we put Gauntlet on the DS and can we kind of make it a little more mature so we have something that's a little more hardcore mature on the DS? Even though they didn't publish it, Eidos published it. But I think they eventually kind of went like, we don't really need this. And yeah, it just never released. And I just think it's crazy that Nintendo Power reviewed it. It's right there. Spider-Man Web of Shadows. This was like when they were doing a lot of original Spider-Man games that were kind of loosely based on like the trilogy at the time. And then Chrono Trigger on the DS, which is a 9.0. It's pretty crazy to me. They released Chrono Trigger on the DS and also the Wii Virtual Console around the same time, which is pretty cool. You'd think like Square Enix would just be like, nah, we're just doing the DS game. But no, it came out on the Wii Virtual Console as well. And yeah, this is generally considered like the definitive version of Chrono Trigger. And yeah, I got my copy when it was like a little cheaper. And I definitely really want to play. I'm kind of holding out hope that they do kind of like an HD 2D remake of it, kind of like what they did with like Live Alive and Dragon Quest 3. But you know, that would be fucking stupid. Rayman Raving Rabbids TV Party got a 5.5 out of 10. I wasn't lying. Oh man, Star Wars: The Clone Wars Lightsaber Duels 4.0. Jesus Christ. WWE 2009 on the DS got a 4.0 as well. My God. They weren't holding back. And then they also have a reviews archive, which is a really good idea because then you can just kind of pick up a Nintendo Power at the time. And if you want kind of like a general idea of like, all right, what game's good, what game's not, all that kind of stuff, you can just kind of, look at this, and kind of find the game that you want to learn about. And there you go. Yeah, you can learn definitely a lot from just looking at this. Because damn it, I need to buy the Chronicles of Narnia Prince Caspian now, and I need to know if it's gonna be good. Oh my God, Burger King Nintendo toy, look at all these. I remember seeing like videos about this on YouTube. I remember seeing people say like, oh, I got them all, look at this. Back in like 2008. I remember a lot of stupid things from 2008 YouTube. And yeah, this was kind of like a Wii promotion where they had like all these Nintendo toys that would work with a Wii remote that kind of like, you plug the Wii remote into them and, you can crank the Wii remote around and do something where it's just like, like probably like you put the Wii remote in Diddy Kong and then you crank it and then his arms kind of go up and down and he kind of moves around. And then this maze thing is kind of like, the Wii remote's a magnet and there's a ball in the maze and you just use the Wii remote to kind of move the ball around the maze. All that kind of stuff. This is really cool. I like that we got this ad here, and the fact that they're trying to give you healthy options like milk and apples and macaroni and cheese at Burger King. What's over here? Community. Oh, this is cool. So this kind of shows like kind of fan made stuff. Which you really does show like, yeah, this magazine was not made by Nintendo. A lot of cool stuff. They're literally showing like Wii mods. Like they're literally showing like, oh man, look at this cool modification a fan did to a Wii and DS console. Like if Nintendo was running this magazine, this man would be shot. And then they have a little advertisement for what's coming next month alongside Crash Mind Over Mutant. Advertisement, I remember this, and yeah, this rips from me. On the back, of course, my beloved. Easily like my most anticipated video game of all time. Like back in 2008, I was like, oh my God, Sonic Unleashed, I need it! And I would see all these trailers, and it would show like the 360 version, and I got the Wii version, and I'm like, this is good. I played it for like, a couple hours, and then, I kind of stopped. I do need to beat this game. This is like my big, like, this was like a childhood game, and I wasn't like disappointed by it. It's more so like I played it and I liked it, but I just didn't, I didn't get as invested into it as I thought I was gonna be. But overall, that was my very first issue of Nintendo Power. Yeah, looking back at it, there's a lot that, you know, just kind of brought back memories. It's a lot of weird stuff that usually brings back memories for you, nostalgia-wise. You know, stuff just going through an old magazine that you remember looking through as a kid, just looking at ads. Like, frankly, like, a lot of these ads, like, I remember just weirdly, like, well, you know, they just kind of bring back memories. And, you know, not that I ever have to relive a time like this. It's just cool to kind of look back at something like this every now and then and just kind of be like, oh man, TV Party sucked.